Finding problems? That's easy. They exist in every community. I'm Terry Springs, your host. We're looking deeper, and we are talking solutions, finding out how we all can make a difference. Now on Talking Solutions, we're going to talk with the Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. And to join us today, Arash Ghafoori. Thank you so much for coming in.
Terry, thank you for having me today.
You know, it's been too long since we talked about Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. I mentioned before we got started today that I had Lynette Rivera in. We had so much fun.
She's awesome, and she's definitely a dedicated and passionate member of our team who wants to fight the issue with homelessness.
And when I say that we had so much fun, I don't mean to imply that we were being jovial and light about a very serious issue, but we really had a good time shining a light on something very important here in Southern Nevada.
Absolutely.
How many people do you think are actually aware of the situation that we have here in Las Vegas with our homeless youth population?
There are some people that know about it, but candidly, not enough. Not anywhere close to enough. Unfortunately, this is a very hidden and voiceless issue. When youth become homeless, they lose many of their natural advocates, their parents, guardians, or others. So they're often on their own. And since they're minors or very young, they're not voters, they're not anyone's constituents, they're not someone's employees, there's no union representing them. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of attention given to this issue. So that's actually one of the many things we're trying to work on, is raise the awareness that this issue exists in our community, and that it exists and is one of the worst incidences of youth homelessness. We have the third highest population of homeless youth in the country right here in our own backyard.
Let's emphasize that. Yeah. This is a big deal.
LA and San Diego are the top two. We're third, but we have more than, for example, New York, Chicago, Seattle. And these are not statistically adjusted numbers. These are raw numbers of youth that we have in our community. So we have the third highest population in our nation. That's a very big deal. But it's not just that. We lead the nation in having the highest percentage of those youth that are living in unsheltered environments. So that's number one that we have. That means that we don't have enough resources in our community to adequately serve this population. And unfortunately, it's a growing population in our community. We also have almost 15,000 homeless youth. That's homeless youth on their own or with families enrolled in the Clark County School District. So this is huge. This isn't just 1 or 2 or 100 kids. In fact, it's estimated last year on any given night on our streets, we have over 2,000 homeless youth. Those are 2,000 homeless youth that aren't in someone's bed, that no one's asking where Timmy or Susie is that night. And that's a really, really big problem that should weigh on the conscience of our community, because it's bad enough to have one. But when we're talking about thousands, and these numbers are growing, and that we have more than in New York or in other major metropolitan areas, that's a big deal. And to your point, that's what we're trying to raise the bar on. We're trying to raise the bar on the information and the awareness that people have in our community about this issue, because we believe this community is filled with amazing, beautiful, bright, and resourceful individuals and families. And if more people just knew about this issue and really knew the devastating consequences it has, not only on that youth, but on our community immediately and in the long run, it would be something that I believe would motivate and compel people to want to take action and to want to get involved. And that's where NPHY comes in. We're wanting everyone we can to get involved and become soldiers in the fight against youth homelessness here locally. Because if we band together, we can do so much more to help this population, bring in the resources, bring in the partnerships, and bring in the support that these youth need to sustainably end their homelessness and go on to be self-sufficient, independent, and beautiful young adults contributing to our society.
I agree with what you said about believing that there are a lot of good people here in Las Vegas, Southern Nevada, our area, who, once they are made aware of this terrible situation, and it is, once they know what's going on and how important it is to the overall health of our community, they will step up and get involved.
Exactly. We have many great people that are already involved with Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth and other organizations fighting against youth homelessness. Unfortunately, we just need to ramp up those efforts. We need to amplify our message and get in the ears of more people so they can understand that this issue affects everyone. Whether it's youth homelessness or not, it's also an education issue. It's also an LGBTQ issue. It's also a foster care issue. It's also countless other issues. So if you care about our education system, if you care about LGBTQ youth, if you care about youth not having access to medical care that they need, if you care about tomorrow's burden on our society, we can reduce that burden if we fight youth homelessness today, because there's huge cost to society for every homeless youth. that goes on to become a chronic homeless adult. And that's not only a travesty for that individual, but it's a failure of our community to help that youth adequately.
Oh, it just makes you really sad to think that that's a wasted life, because that's what it ends up being. These kids are still undeveloped enough. They can be, when they're cared for properly and looked after, they can turn into amazing adults. And my heart goes out to the thousands of kids in the Clark County School District who are identified as homeless youth, who are still hanging in there, trying to go to school, trying to most likely not share with everyone in their classes that they are homeless, but they're coming in and trying to make a go of it anyway.
You're exactly right. School is often the last refuge that many of our homeless youth have. It's the last place where they know they can get a meal and get a couple hours of shelter. But you're right. I mean, it's amazing that these youth, despite these circumstances, are staying in school. However, we got to think about the quality of their ability to actually learn when they're in these situations. And a lot of the homeless youth I talk to, they're sitting in school, but they're not necessarily concerned about the math test that they have next week and whether they need to study for it. They're concerned about where they're going to sleep that night, how they're going to feel safe, how are they going to get a meal beyond the lunch that's provided to them at school. And these are the realities that those youth that are in those schools are thinking about while they're sitting in those chairs. So if we had more resources and more services that meet the needs of these youth, they can actually be sitting in those chairs and focus on their futures and focus on what they want to become. And that's what Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth as an agency does. One of our many strategies and goals of these youth is to reduce any need for them to worry about basic needs, about their survival, and to know that all those things can be taken care of for them so they can focus on themselves. It's an incredible amount of pressure to put on a youth, 14, 15, 16, to be thinking about their academic success when they don't have anywhere to go home and study. They may not even have a home. They may not even know where they're going to eat tonight.
That's really understandable, though, how they would worry. That would be more than in the back of my mind. That would be right up front.
Exactly.
So many things could fall through the cracks. There's so many things that might not come through for them.
Exactly.
And I always say it's hard enough to be a kid if everything's on your side. Add all of these other impediments, and wow, how do they even get through it?
You know, I was actually thinking about this morning as well. It's an interesting perspective. I was thinking back to growing up and trying to finish high school. You're right. It's hard enough if you have a lot of the things many of us take for granted that these youth wish that they had. Basic things, shelter, somewhere to go, somewhere to study, a supportive parent that cares about their future and asks them questions about their education and what they're doing with their day. And I was thinking how blessed many of us are to be able to finish school and go on and chase our dreams. But it's still hard enough even if you have all the odds going for you.
Oh, yeah.
But when you start taking these odds and turning them against you, it is nothing short of incredible and breathtaking to see these youth resiliency. Because even despite the trauma and abuse in the hands that they've been dealt, that unfortunately they've had to face homelessness, once you take care of some of those basic needs and show them that there are safe and supportive adults that are willing to help them and guide and work with them, they become empowered and you see them blossom again like flowers. And I always say that we don't know who's going to walk through our next drop-in center. It could be the next president. It could be the next judge. It could be the next social worker that's helping a future youth. It could be the next Terry Springs hosting a radio show. It could be the next artist, the next classical composer. We just don't know. But every time I visit the drop-in center and I see some of the youth, we see so much raw talent and raw potential. And when we don't do anything about it, these youth become tomorrow's chronically homeless adults. And they continue at a disadvantage, and a disadvantage for their economic success, for their financial success, their ability to have families, and the ability to contribute to our society in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And that's what we want to do, is that we want to rally our community to send a message out that it makes sense, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, regardless of what issues you care about. The issue of youth homelessness touches every issue and feeds into those issues, because if we don't do anything now, those individuals will be plagued with issues and concerns that require tons of service and support. And if we fought that battle now, we could not only save these youth and get them on a path that they choose where they can be self-sufficient and independent and chasing their dreams, but also in the future, they're going to be paying back the system.
Exactly.
As opposed to having to unfortunately continue to rely on the system.
Contributing members of our community.
Exactly right.
This is a really important topic, and it's the Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. In studio with us today, Arash Ghafoori. I want to go back to that one point that we started with earlier, and that is that Las Vegas has such an enormous population of homeless youth for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
We've got more than New York, Chicago, cities like that. Even though Las Vegas in size, no, way smaller. We've got a lot of homeless kids right here. You mentioned also about 2,000 they estimate are sleeping on the streets every night, but there's a lot more who I'm sure are couch surfing or staying wherever they can just to get by.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got to step up and do something because time is not our friend. Time is constantly ticking. These kids are advancing into their adult years. We got to make sure that they're set up for success.
Exactly. And sometimes organizations like ours are their last hope of being able to get set up on that path that you're talking about. Many of these youth no longer have anyone that's caring about where they sleep or what they're doing or what they're accomplishing. And when they come to Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth, we try to become like their family. So we don't want to have a transactional or service-like relationship with these youth. We want to actually build a relationship with these youth that lasts long beyond the service delivery. And we have many youth that keep coming back to us once they're adults, once they're set up and have jobs and have their own places. They still stay connected with us. It's really important for us to create that connection with them because these youth sometimes have nowhere else to turn when they need help. And it's not just about needing resources or help. They need relationships. They need to dispel the myth that every adult, every institution is out there to either hurt them or take advantage of them, or what they most often feel was never there for them. And if we're going to reduce the incidences of homelessness, we need to ramp up our systems substantially in our community to make sure that we can adequately address this. So no youth, if they're encountering homelessness, has to turn to the streets if they don't want to.
Well, think about it. As parents, it's always got to protect the kids, want to protect the kids. The ones that you are working with the Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth are kids, but they're not being protected. They're not in a safe place. And Las Vegas, as much as I love it, and it's my home, for a kid on their own can be a very dangerous place.
Absolutely. There's typical homeless youth factors that affect homeless youth across the country, but yes, there are certain unique factors here in Las Vegas and Nevada that can exacerbate the issue for sure. For example, the fact that we're a 24/7 city, the fact that we're a hypersexualized city, the fact that we have so much commercial sexual exploitation going on, the fact that unfortunately our education system stands to improve as well.
It needs a lot of help, I get it.
Yes, and even the weather, the fact that homeless youth can survive here on the streets most of the year versus in other places they can't if it's snowing or below zero, etc. There's a lot of reasons that unfortunately exacerbate the circumstance of youth homelessness here in Nevada and Las Vegas. And unfortunately, a lot of our stats are negative and we're near the top of those lists, or unfortunately on the wrong side of those lists. Where we should be at the bottom, we're unfortunately near the top. And really the intersections with education, with sexual exploitation are strong in our community. In fact, the number one risk factor for any youth to become a commercially sexually exploited child or a victim of sexual exploitation is them being homeless. Because homelessness for youth happens suddenly and unpredictably. Typically, when an adult experiences homelessness, there's an external or internal shock to their life. They lose a job, a major unanticipated medical bill, whatever the case may be. And there's a downward spiral. An adult realizes they need to be able to take care of their bills and pay their rent and everything. And if they can't work, they're not going to be able to pay their bills, which could render them in a situation of homelessness. So there's that downward spiral. But for youth, it can happen suddenly and unpredictably. Susie could be on her way to school thinking everything's fine and come home to find no home, no parents. Either she's been abandoned, kicked out, or she comes home to the same abuse or neglect that she's been suffering from for years on end and decides, I don't want this anymore. And I would rather choose the cold, hard, dark streets opposed to whatever's going on at home.
That's a really good point to make, Arash, because it had been pointed out to me in one of our discussions a long time back that if you think about a homeless kid, how bad did it have to be at home for them to opt for choosing to sleep on the street instead?
I've heard some horror stories about how bad it's been. And when donors and others I talk to ask me this, I try to point them to the news. And we see a lot of sensational news headlines, how parents are leaving their kids in cars, parents are forcing their kids to do unimaginable things, letting other adults in their lives in ways that never should be in their lives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And people think this isn't happening in your own backyard. It's on the news. It's happening in California. It's happening in another city, in another state. Well, those are the ones that make the news. And for every one story that makes the news, there's thousands of similar and tragic stories that are unheard. Yet Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth sees those stories day in and day out because it's huge. Youth homelessness is very unique in how it occurs and why it occurs. You know, you said earlier, some of the youth in school may not be advertising their status of being homeless. You're absolutely right. Some kids don't even have the wherewithal that they are homeless because they're couch surfing or doing other things. That's just what they've been used to. But others are. But they don't want to be bullied. They don't want to be stigmatized or ostracized or singled out. And unfortunately, we were talking about earlier that school becomes that last place of refuge for these youth. But unfortunately, sometimes they choose not even to go back to school because they only have 2 or 3 changes of clothes and they get bullied because of that. Or they get bullied because they can't practice the same hygiene as everyone else does because they don't have a place to take a shower. And when the weight of that emotional trauma becomes too much to handle, then they don't go to that school, which is sometimes their last refuge. And then on the streets, bad things can happen to them suddenly. You know, a lot of times I talk to adults and adults are like, well, if I was in that situation, if I got kicked out of home or if I decided I couldn't deal with abuse anymore, well, I'd go get a place. I'd go access social services. I'd get help. I'd go to a food bank. Well, when I was 14, 15, 16, I was still just learning about how the world worked in general. I did not know all these specific things or ways to help myself because I was still dependent on someone. And for youth to be thrust into situations when they're on the streets and expected to know things that they just don't know yet because it's happening during their most critical and formative education years, well, they don't know often what to do to help themselves. But even if they had the wherewithal to say, well, I'm going to go get a job, often during these tense exchanges between parents and youth, where they're either kicked out, abandoned, tossed out, whatever the case may be, it's not like there's a pause in it where someone goes, well, here's your identity fanny pack or your identity folder with all the information you're going to need.
All the info you'll need and tips.
Yeah, so they're kind of stuck because they can't, I don't know if many of the adults listening were going to remember that pesky little line on a lot of forms we had to take home to our parents or guardians that said parent or legal guardian signature. They need that to prove their identity, to get their IDs, their birth certificates, etc. So if they don't have those things, then they can't even turn to work or other resources to try to help them. So unfortunately, it becomes pretty bad for youth who become homeless pretty quickly.
Arash Ghafoori is with us with the Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. We've got a big problem in Las Vegas, flat out. I just want to tell it like it is. We've got thousands of homeless youth in our city right now today who will be sleeping on the streets tonight, who need our help. And as I mentioned earlier, time's not our friend. These kids are aging one day at a time, and we need to get them up and safe and getting whatever resources we have available so that they can move on to be productive, happy, functioning adults. And it's happening quickly. So we've got this huge problem. We realize it. As Las Vegans, as people here in Southern Nevada who care about what goes on, now that we're aware of the problem, what can we do to help?
There's all kinds of ways to help. I highly recommend starting by going to visit our website, www.nphy.org. Typically, when we engage with people in the community, a lot of people are thinking, well, they want a donation or something like that. No, we just want people to get more involved, learn more about the issue, because then you become a natural ally. And in fact, sometimes the people that learn about our issue become advocates for us. So we need people to advocate. We need people to volunteer, and not just volunteer their time, but volunteer a particular skill set. We have many people who are lawyers, who work with numbers, who work on a radio, who do a variety of things that can use their skill set and their professions and leverage those to help homeless youth in our community. So not only do we have volunteering in terms of time, but we have volunteering in terms of a knowledge or a skill set that you have that we need. We need tutors. We need medical practitioners to help us with youth. We need all kinds of very specific and specialized resources. And of course, we need resources as well. NPHY and other organizations may be the platforms for change, but platforms need to be mobilized. Platforms need to be fueled. Platforms need to be given energy. And that is our donor base, our volunteer base, and our advocate kids that are out in the community. But I'll tell you, the thing that we want to happen the most is that we want you to come, take a tour, maybe sign up for volunteer orientation, just learn more about the issue. As parents, we need to know that some of the youth that may be spending the night at our house on the weekends over and over and over again, that there just may be something more to it. And to be out there and to be armed with that knowledge of what it is to be a homeless youth and how to identify that, a lot of parents, a lot of our coaches, a lot of individuals that go to church or go to any community setting where they're going to see kids become our natural outreach workers as well. And will give us a call and say, hey, I think there's this youth here who may need help. Or go up to youth and say, hey, have you heard of the Safe Place program? It's this program that Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth operates, and you can walk into any Terrible Herbs gas station, go to any fire department, or get on any bus 24 hours a day. And you don't even have to be homeless. You just have to be under the age of 18. Yes, a yellow diamond that says Safe Place, because we know that we can predict when situations going to happen to youth. So we need to be there and be ready to respond to them where they're at. And that's the beauty of that program particularly. But there's a lot of ways that we want people to get involved, because the more involved you get, you know people. We all know people. And that's what we need to do. We need this issue to go viral so we can get more people talking to each other and to say, did you know that we have this many homeless youth in our community? Did you know how many are enrolled in school? Did you know what happens to them if we don't do anything? Because if we have the entire community saying that this is a problem, the entire community will band together and solve it. And that's exactly what Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth is trying to do. That's exactly why, in partnership with Las Vegas Sands, we kicked off the movement. And that's all an effort for us to raise the bar on what we are doing to combat the issue of youth homelessness locally. And it's an initiative to build a focused and sustainable end to youth homelessness. So we really want to instill a sense of urgency. You said before, time is these youth's enemy. Time is also this community's enemy when it comes to fighting the issue of youth homelessness. So we're trying to instill a sense of urgency. We're trying to rally the troops. And right now we're in the middle of buttoning up our final touches on a plan that we're going to debut to the community that I'm happy to talk about in a little bit, that really serves as a roadmap. So we can finally, as a community, be serving homeless youth, regardless of what system they go into, regardless of where they turn up. We can be serving them with a common map, with alignment, and a common vision for what success is in our community when it comes to ending youth homelessness.
So it's bringing together all these different resources into one. And this must be what I've seen, which is hashtag Be the Movement.
Yeah, Be the Movement. So last year, we had our first annual Homeless Youth Summit, the Southern Nevada Youth Homelessness Summit, which was presented by NPHY and Las Vegas Sands, because we just wanted to amplify the issue. We wanted more people to be aware that the issue exists and how bad it is in our community. So the first one was really just information and awareness. But also that day at the summit, last year, November 2nd, we kicked off the campaign, which is the movement to end youth homelessness in Southern Nevada. Hashtag Be the Movement. And this movement, like I said, is a sustained and concentrated effort to do everything we can to end youth homelessness and to attack it from all angles. And at that summit, when we started the movement, we committed to the community that one of the first things that we would do as part of kicking off the movement is to create a plan alongside with our community that is locally created, locally driven. That way we can have a roadmap for what we need to do. Youth homelessness is a very complicated issue. It's not as easy as getting more food. It's not as easy as getting more gift cards. It's not even as easy as just finding a place for youth to stay temporarily. We need to wrap them around in a service-rich environment that addresses their needs. And it can never be a one-size-fit-all solution because we humans, we're not one-size-fit-all. We have different cultures, we have different backgrounds, we identify differently, we learn differently, we see the world differently. Therefore, services have to be designed to meet the consumer, the client, our homeless youth, not the other way around. So at this summit that's coming up November 2nd, we're going to be debuting that plan, which is a roadmap really to help us solve youth homelessness in our community. And the coolest thing about it is that last year when we convened the community, we rallied and asked people to help us. And we've had hundreds of local individuals and agencies helping us create this plan. But even the coolest part beyond that is that we have current and former youth who have experienced homelessness that have been involved in leadership positions in every step of the way in developing this plan. So this plan isn't informed just by a bunch of adults and experts. It's informed by local homeless youth themselves who have an interest in letting us know what they really need. So in this plan, it was driven first and foremost by current and formerly local homeless youth
That's a great idea because kids themselves understand they're able to use their energy and their creative talents to try to keep another kid from experiencing that as well. Make it better for everyone.
Exactly. So right after that last summit, we rallied the community and we set up several different groups to help us with the creation of this plan. We sought out experts from across the country to help us with this plan, but we also worked with private corporations such as Las Vegas Sands, higher education such as UNLV, Greenspun College of Urban Affairs. Most proud of working with Southern Nevada's Youth Action Board, which is called Young Adults in Charge, which is a board of former and currently homeless youth that exists here locally, that informs us on what they need, that advocates for themselves, and serves as a leadership model for those individuals. We got everyone together, and over the course of hundreds of meetings and hundreds of hours with hundreds of individuals, we brought together other service providers, other advocacy groups such as Nevada Homeless Alliance, government agencies such as Clark County School District, Department of Family Services, Department of Juvenile Justice, philanthropic groups, private businesses, all together to create this plan. And this plan is going to be the first time that our community has a specific plan in place on how it plans to address the issue of youth homelessness. And once this plan is released, we'll be hoping that the jurisdictions and the state adopt this as their plan as well, so we are all serving on a common pathway towards success.
We're talking with Arash Ghafoori with the Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. We have emphasized throughout our discussion today that Las Vegas has a big issue with homeless youth. Numbers alone are much bigger than the size of our city, that our numbers of homeless youth beat Chicago, beat even New York City in the number of kids that we've got on the street. And I think it would be important for us to all look at this the right way, and that is, it's a negative thing that it exists, but the kids involved are not a negative thing.
No.
They're a positive, they're a resource, but we have to set them up for success, and then we all will benefit.
Yes. These kids are our future. Not to be cliche, but it's very true.
It's true.
And I think that a lot of people have this conception that if a youth is homeless, they must have done something to deserve it. They must have done something wrong. They broke the rules or something like that. Guys, I'm here to tell you that that's a fallacy. It's just not true. The overwhelming majority of these youth do not want to be homeless. They are acutely aware of the situation they're in, and they wish they weren't. And they're willing to do whatever they can to get out of that situation. And we, as organizations like Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth, as a community, we have to compete with people on the streets who are trying to lure them and take advantage of them.
Because of the danger that exists here.
Exactly. And in fact, 1 in 3 youth within 48 hours of being on the streets will be lured into exchanging their bodies for some resource that they need to survive. Because like I said, youth homelessness is happening during the most critical and formative education years where they're still supposed to be learning not only from brick and mortar schools, but from adults and their families. And whether they're involved in sports or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or an after school program, whatever it may be, they don't have any of those resources anymore. They don't have any of those educational opportunities anymore. So unfortunately, they have blinders on ways that they could be helped. So that is why we have a sense of urgency in doing all this. That is why we're trying to release a plan. That is why we're trying to ramp up people in the community to get behind this plan and to be part of the movement, because we don't want this to happen to these youth anymore. Although we can't police parenting, we can't police some of the other reasons why youth experience homelessness. What we can do is create an environment that's so rich with resources that youth can immediately access, where no youth has to turn to the streets. That is when we know that this plan has been successful. It's going to be a long way to get there. But along with our youth that were part of this plan development, along with the community, along with a lot of experts, and even in alignment with federal agencies, we've determined that the plan's vision for success is that youth homelessness be rare. Youth homelessness be brief when it does have to happen, that youth homelessness only happens one time to these individuals, and that it is equitably addressed. And what I mean by that is youth homelessness shouldn't be happening at all. But if it does, it needs to be rare. And we need to look at why youth are becoming homeless, whether it's from families or whether it's from systems like exiting out of foster care, exiting out of our juvenile justice system, and remedy those so it can be as rare as possible. If unfortunately youth has to become homeless, then we want it to be brief, meaning that our community should be able to respond and mobilize quickly and wrap these youth around with the services that they need, the supports they need, the environments that they need, so this can be brief and be done, and one time, meaning that their experience in the homeless service system should have been effective and put them in a situation where they can get to the next step of their life and next step of their independence. But lastly, equitably. Equity is a huge problem because the way our system works is not equitably addressing every youth of every color, every youth of every size, or every youth of every background, or every youth that identifies a certain way sexually or a certain way when it comes to their gender identity. So we need to make sure that our system is equitably addressing those that are overrepresented in the homeless youth population. Now, homeless youth comes in every shape and size, every socioeconomic background. I have seen kids of celebrities all the way to the hardest hit of kids, all under the category of homeless youth. So youth homelessness doesn't discriminate. Doesn't discriminate by how much money you have in your bank account. It doesn't discriminate by where you live and what your zip code is. It discriminates through domestic abuse. It discriminates through drugs. It discriminates through severe family breakdown at home, etc. And all these issues contribute to sometimes people of color, especially young men of color, LGBTQ youth, to be overrepresented in the population because these kids are struggling, particularly LGBTQ youth who are homeless for no other reason than how they identify with themselves.
They just came out to be themselves.
Yeah,
and
they are themselves.
Discarded.
They're becoming victims of our culture wars around this issue, and they shouldn't be. And it is tragic for any youth to be homeless for any reason, and they're all tragic and equal reasons. However, it is especially tragic to see a youth on the streets or being cast away from their family for no other reason than how they identify to themselves. Something that we should be celebrating in society. The diversity of everyone and everything is an issue that they're on the streets for. And imagine the mental trauma that is associated with having something and getting it taken away from you because of how you identify. So we want to make sure that our systems are equitable. And equitable means that we need a service-rich environment with all kinds of services that are culturally competent to that youth's needs. So we need training to make sure that we are competent on how to address all different types of youth that may walk through the doors of service providers. But we also need to make sure that we have enough types of services where it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Where if a youth wants to go to a shelter that specializes in LGBTQ, somewhere where they feel comfortable, they go, well, I think I can be myself here. We need more of those options in town, and we need more of every type of resource because we are significantly deficient when it comes to housing stock and service resources for our youth. Significantly deficient. We only have a couple hundred dedicated youth beds in our entire state. Like I told you, just here in Clark County, any given night, it's estimated could be 2,000 youth. That's a very, very big disparity, and a disparity that we can solve. And the beautiful thing about this plan is that it outlines exactly how to do that. It takes a look at the data that we have nationally and locally. Mm-hmm. It takes a look at what's going on in homeless youth's interactions with the public school systems, with the child welfare, the juvenile justice systems, and even youth who are being sexually exploited. We look at why homeless youth are becoming homeless in Southern Nevada in the first place, how often they return to homelessness, and what their outcomes are in the system, because that's areas that we can start saying the data shows this. This is what we need to do. But beside that, we cast a net really wide across the nation to see what promising or best practices there are in the community. Incorporated that into our plan, and we developed 5 big goals that we think that this plan should address. This is part of our vision. And with each one of those goals, we've identified objectives and metrics that will allow us to measure progress, that will allow us to hold the community and ourselves as NPHY accountable to, are we really making a difference and are we really moving the needle in the right direction? And I think more people can come learn more about that and find out how they can be part of it, because we need all kinds of help. Because once the plan's released, we're going to be tapping different agencies, different groups, and different individuals to help own part of the plan, because we know not one system, not one individual, not one group can solve this issue.
No,
so we need to divide and
that.
conquer as a team.
We've got to wrap our arms as a community around this issue and help these kids. When you're talking about thousands of kids every night right here in Las Vegas, homeless youth, they are vulnerable. They need to be protected, safe, and given options. All of this is doable, but it's a big issue, and so we need to get involved, and we need to work with the Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. Whatever our skill set is, whatever our resources are. You mentioned just moments ago about gift cards. Think about it. These kids that are homeless, You give them a card for Subway or even a grocery store gift card. Let them go get a healthy meal. Let them get some food instead of handing them a bunch of cans when A, they're heavy, B, they don't have any place to store or cook them anyway.
Exactly.
How about we give them a way that they can actually use the resources that we offer?
Exactly.
There's got to be something we can do to help.
There is. You can go to nphy.org just in general or / the movement to find many ways to get involved, because you're absolutely right. We need everything from tutors. In fact, it's much simpler. Can you cook? Well, guess what? Homeless youth need to learn an incredible amount of life skills to become self-sufficient. Many of the youth I encounter don't know that you can't use the same knife to cut raw meat and vegetables. Very simple things that we take for granted. We as adults, it's amazing. I have to take a second and just thank teachers and anyone who taught me anything in my life, because I take it all for granted. I use it every day and I never think about what it meant to teach me these things I use every day to help myself be the best I can be. And it's our responsibility at NPHY, when no one else is there for these youth, either to advocate, to represent them, or to be there for them and actually do the job that someone else failed at doing. Well, it's not only our honor, but it's our obligation to make sure that we can teach these youth the life skills that they need to, that we so often take for granted, on simple things: balancing your checkbook, cooking, how to navigate the public transportation system, thinking about what it means to have a job, staying away from all these predatory loan people. All these different things are things that we as adults, we've learned or have experienced that these youth have not yet. So it is our responsibility, like you said, for each individual youth to recognize where they are, who they are, what they know, what they don't, and to supplement what they don't. But it first takes building trust with these youth. And it's not as easy as it sounds to say, well, I'm just going to go help these youth today. Because these youth, adults in institutional environments, they don't necessarily jive with. They're not trusting of us. They're not trusting of some of these places because we've either failed them, an adult has represented their abuser, or someone that let them down, or someone said that I'll be there for you and wasn't. So these youth are often not exactly trusting. So when we're asked, how can I help? Are you a nice and loving and good person? Then you can come to NPHY and contribute to dispelling the myth that every adult or institutional environment is a mean person. And we have so many youth that come to us after interacting with volunteers or something and say, I had no idea that anyone besides you guys here cared about us. I had no idea that there's some people that are just really nice and fun and will sit and share a story with you or play a video game with you.
Or listen.
If you have sewing skills or anything, we can use it. If you have leftover pens, we can use it to arm kids with school supplies. You just show up and we will empower you to help homeless youth in our community. That's what we need. We need more soldiers. We need more people that, quite frankly, give a damn about these youth and their plight, want to roll up their sleeves and do something about it. And we can all be part of making this community a better environment for youth, and we can all be a part of accomplishing what the plan sets out to create a community where no youth ever has to spend a night on the streets if they don't want to. And the only way we're ever going to do that is if the entire community rallies behind this issue. We've seen our community do it for countless other issues, countless other tragedies that occur. Well, this is a tragedy that is occurring every day and every second of the day.
Going on all the time, every single night.
That's something that we forget about sometimes, but not anyone that works at NPHY, and we want to make sure we can amplify that message and get what we're doing to the ears of more individuals so that they can be inspired to help too.
We just need more people who care about the issue and are willing to do something, anything about it.
Yes.
Because all of us together, as you said, we can fix this, but we do have to care.
Exactly. And it is fixable. It's fixable through hard work, through good ideas, through resources, through policy and legislative changes, through innovative public-private partnerships. Not one sector can do anything alone. So in this particular battle, we need public-private partnerships. We need businesses and government, providers and government working side by side, not necessarily on either side of the aisle, but we need to get rid of the aisle and just make it one big room where we are all fighting together. And we also need to think about more resources in our community. We need more housing. We need more services. And lastly, we also need to be thinking about homeless youth in a much wider lens, using an intersectional sort of framework, because these aren't just homeless youth, as I told you in the very beginning of the interview. These are youth that are in the child welfare systems, in the juvenile justice systems. These are youth that are suffering from our immigration or LGBTQ culture wars. These are youth that are in our schools, fighting so hard to stay in school because their next choice, they don't know where they're going, and that they're lucky to find someone to couch with, and if not, they could be on the streets. So this issue is not just the issue of homeless youth. It's an education issue. It's a hospital issue. It's a public policy issue. It's a health issue. It's a long-term concern for any employer in Nevada who wants to have a quality and viable workforce. It's a long-term concern for any policymaker who wants to have voters that are informed in making the right electoral decisions for our community. And I could go on and on and on, but this is truly an issue that can affect and does every member of this community.
Arash Ghafoori with the Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth. We need to make people aware of what a big issue it is. I know that NPHY has the drop-in center, which is great. It's a safe place for kids, and it's a nice center to be able to find resources.
And connections to other services.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Having that is nice, but it doesn't even begin to cover the problem, because the problem is so many times larger than that.
Exactly. We have emergency shelters, we have housing programs, outreach programs, family reunification programs. Our partners that serve homeless youth also have beds and different programs that specialize around serving youth that have interactions with law enforcement, or homeless youth that have interactions with the foster care system, for example. And all of us working hard, we still collectively don't have anywhere to the adequate resources this community needs to really effectively combat this issue. And every day we are losing youth to the streets. Every day we are losing youth out of our education system, which affects our graduation rates and everything else. Every day we are losing youth who could help our community. And like I said, I must stress though, it's a very tragic issue. It's very tragic to hear some of these stories. But what I invite you to experience and be part of is what can happen if the community helps these youth. And to see a youth with such a tragic story become an attorney serving here locally, to become a teacher, to become someone that works as a social worker, to become an architect, to become an advocate who runs around the country and gives TED Talks about this issue because they don't want this to happen to anyone else, including their little brothers and sisters. To see these youth become powerful and smart individuals who want to give back, that's why we're doing this. We're doing this because we know that these youth deserve a chance, and that often NPHY is their last chance in these circumstances. But NPHY is only as effective as the people that are supporting that institution, so it can help these homeless youth. So we thank everyone in the community for their part and what they've done, what they'll continue to do, and what I hope we can motivate everyone to rise up and do more of.
We need more help.
That's right.
Instead of looking at our youth homelessness situation as a tragedy, instead let's look beyond it to offer the help that's so sorely needed. There's so much hope in these kids. There's so much potential in these kids. But if we don't step up and help, that will never be realized.
We look at it as a challenge that we can win and overcome. We need to. It's not only our moral obligation, but it is a challenge that we can win because our community has tons of issues. And if we can checkbox this one effectively and sustainably, we can start talking about other issues that are affecting our youth, other issues that are affecting other parts of our population, because they're all just as important too. But when you have scarce resources, you can only fight so many things at once, but the return on investment is incredible. In fact, we even have a study that demonstrates that for every dollar invested into NPHY, we saved the community almost $14.50 in long-term savings.
Wow.
Because we avoid unnecessary incarcerations. We avoid unnecessary hospitalizations, unnecessary need to move into the adult homelessness system that has a cost, not only to those people, to their families, but also to society as well.
Yeah.
So through helping homeless youth now, we can avoid them having to enter those systems and actually enter the systems that many of us operate in today, which is a system of self-sufficiency, independence, having family, having workplace support, and having a roof over our heads and being able to live our lives and explore our interests. And that's all we want for every person in our community, but especially these youth who have done nothing to be in the situations that they're in.
They're deserving. One of the things that we do, Arash, is we ask on Talking Solutions, what can we do to help you?
Well, one thing that we do need, we need everyone that we can to sign the pledge that we have on nphy.org/the-movement. This is not a fundraising pledge. No one's asking anyone for money. We're just asking you to sign a pledge by just writing your name to join a list that says, we as citizens want to do more about this issue of youth homelessness. We care about this issue, and we will rally in any way we can, because we want to demonstrate to our policymakers, to our partners, and to our stakeholders that, look, this is an issue that everyone cares about. So at minimum, please visit www.nphy.org/the-movement, find our pledge and sign it. It'll take 30 seconds. You can do it on your mobile right now, but we want to demonstrate that there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people in our community. Another thing you can do is just check out our website and see if you're interested in volunteering. They have volunteer orientations all the time. We make it absolutely easy. And a lot of people think that they don't want to go because they don't want to see the tragedy of youth homelessness. We're not inviting you to see the tragedy of youth homelessness. We're inviting you to see the resiliency of these amazing young individuals. We're inviting you to see their talents, to see them operate as young humans that are hungry for success, that are hungry for love, that are hungry for acceptance. It is not a place of tragedy. It is a place of hope. But we need you to come visit to make it even more of a hopeful and colorful place.
Open your eyes and see the promise.
That's right.
We will have the links and everything on our Talking Solutions Facebook page, along with a podcast of our discussion today. It's important for everybody to understand exactly what we have in Las Vegas in the way of homeless youth. There's no time to waste. We need to step up and do something about this and be a positive part of the change and the difference right now. As we said before, time is not our friend.
Exactly. And if you want to learn more too, we invite you to attend our summit. You can visit our website to get more information. We still have registration open, and it's going to be a beautiful day where you learn more about the issue, get to hear from homeless youth firsthand, and also get to witness the unveiling of this plan, because I assure everyone that's listening that there's a way for you to plug in and make that plan a success.
#BeTheMovement. All the info on the Talking Solutions Facebook page. Arash Ghafoori, is there anything I'm forgetting?
No, I want to thank you all for providing a platform. This is about Talking Solutions, and this plan and everything that we're trying to do with the movement is Talking Solutions specifically about the issue of youth homelessness. Thank you for that. And I just want to thank everyone in the community for any issue that they're passionate about or invest in, because it's all of you that allow the brave staff that is at NPHY to be in a position to help these vulnerable youth and empower them with the skills, resources, love, support, and time they need to become positively contributing members of society that will be our future friends, could be our future policymakers, our future doctors. They're just our future. So we invite you to be part of making that the best and brightest future that we can.
The Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth, Arash Ghafoori, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us today on Talking Solutions.
Thank you for having me on Talking Solutions.